You're listening to the Jewish Song Show from the Jewish Song Project, a 501c3 educational nonprofit that uses Jewish music and storytelling to build Jewish connection. I'm Steve Singer, and in each episode we follow one song's journey through history, culture, and people's lives. And today, we are not alone. Joining me from the pages of history, the balcony of the Yiddish Theater, a boarding house in Nicholayev, and apparently from whatever wireless plan they have in Olam Haba, the world to come, is our very special guest, composer, chazan, and occasional Lemeshke, Sholom Secunda.
Shalom Aleichem, listeners. Don't worry, I've had 50 years of rest in Gan Eden. I'm ready for a few episodes.
If you enjoyed this show, please tap follow or subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. It really helps other listeners to find the podcast. You'll find sources, links, and extras in the show notes, including a link to our Jewish Song Show Spotify playlist, where you can hear the music from the show, and a link to our Jewish Song Show blog, where you can join the conversation. Today's episode, Lemeshke, the boy who thought his name meant nobody until a song proved otherwise. This is the Jewish Song Show. What makes a song Jewish? The words? The scale? The way a room lifts when the melody does? To answer that, meet a boy who didn't know his name until a song gave him one.
He was small, shy, a little lost. Not a great swimmer.
We'll get to the river, I promise. But first, we start in a classroom. September 1899, the first week of school in Nicholayev. A boy and his father walked to the Jewish school across the street from their apartment. They opened the door of the one-room cheder to find a large wooden table surrounded by narrow benches. The rabbi is seated in the middle. Avram Secunda introduces his 6-year-old saying, "This is Shalom. He's no good for anything. I hope he's better at learning than other things."
Ah, yes. He's no good for anything. You know, Steve, in those days, we didn't have gentle parenting.
As his father leaves, the rabbi tells Shalom to join the boys on the other side of the table. Once the sting of his introduction fades, he looks around the classroom to see boys his age and older. He watches with fascination as the older boys put on tefillin, wrapping long leather straps and small black boxes to their arms and heads. One boy, soon to be bar mitzvah, stands alone at the head of the table and begins to sing the morning prayers. And deep inside Shalom, something lifts.
The words were ancient, the feeling very new.
Nicholayev is a city inside the Pale of Settlement, where the Tsar allows Jews to live. Life runs on papers, quotas, and watchful officials. For families like the Segundas, that means overcrowded streets, scarce jobs, and a 6-day work week of hard labor just to keep bread, potatoes, and herring, the poor man's chicken, on the table. Shalom's father bends scrap metal into bed frames. His mother bends worry into lullabies.
And questions into prayers.
On Friday night, the world resets. When Shalom's mother lights the Shabbos candles, cups the flames with her hands, and covers her eyes to recite the blessing, their cramped kitchen is transformed into a palace in time. Shalom's father recites Shalom Aleichem, welcoming the Sabbath, and the weight of life in Nicholayev lifts for the night. For his older brothers who are already working from dawn till dusk, Friday night dinner at the Shabbos table is the only time in the week where they are all together. After the blessings on the wine and challah comes the test. Each child must translate a line of prayer from the Siddur, the prayer book. Each week the same, and Shalom dreads it. His brothers tease and laugh. Let's see what Lemeshke knows.
You hear this? Lemeshke. Good for nothing. Useless. For a while, I thought it was on my birth certificate.
But this week, something is different. Cheder has changed him. The music of the prayers is still in his ears. No, Shalom, his father says, bringing him back to the Shabbos table. Everyone waits. He stands up, walks over to the head of the table where his father is sitting, and turns to the first page of his new siddur, clears his throat, and sings.
Ma tovu ohalecha
Yaakov, mishkenosecha Yisrael. How lovely are your tents, Jacob, your dwelling places, Israel. Steady, bell clear. The room stops, astonished. His father smiles first and pulls the boy close. Well, what do you say to that? He's not such a Lemeshke after all. His mother, Anna, kisses his head. What a sweet voice he has. You see, in Yiddish, Lemeshke is what you call a kid who fades into corners. Until this night, Shalom thought his name was Lemeshke, but the nickname died that night, killed by a song.
It's a good way to go for a nickname. And schuldig mir, excuse me, Steve, I think you put the horse with the cart.
Do you mean the cart before the horse?
Yeah, look, if you're really going to understand the Meshuggah journey of my song, I think you're going to need to find Lemeshke where he began. Your friends who are listening, they need to understand me. They need to know what came before the hit song and the $30.
Yes, we'll get to the $30 in a later episode, that's a promise.
Don't worry. By then, you'll be more upset about the contracts than I was. Roll the tape, Reb Steve.
Okay. Let's go all the way back to the beginning of the story, Shalom's first week. It's Saturday morning, Shabbos Mevorchim, August 1894, greeting the new Jewish month of Elul, the start of the high holiday season in Alexandria. Now Ukraine, then the Russian Empire. It's an oppressively hot Saturday. Avram Secunda and his boys are sitting packed into a tiny, airless shul, sweating in black wool, the only suit material any self-respecting Jew would wear to the synagogue. Avram is called to the Torah to give a Thanksgiving blessing over the birth of his new son. One son is missing. 7-year-old Beryl slipped out, just for a quick swim in the river with his friends. He was sure he could be in and out before his father ever noticed. At home, the midwife is swaddling Shalom. Anna, exhausted, closes her eyes. Back at the synagogue, Reb Avram Secunda. 2 boys stand in the doorway, soaking wet and dripping on the floor, shaking so hard they can barely speak. It's Beryl in the river. Come quick. Avram runs with his sons to the Ingulitz River. By the time they reach the bank, the current has already done its work. Beryl's body has drifted toward the shore. Avram wades in and lifts his lifeless son out of the water. He is buried the next day.
It wasn't my fault. It is not at all likely that if Mama had not been with child, she would have been with Beryl, watching over him at the river. But what made my arrival even sadder, in addition to the great loss, Mama had already brought 5 sons into this Secunda household. And if another child is to come, why not a girl? Why not? But would you say that was my doing or my undoing? Considering all the strikes against me, is it any wonder that I felt out of place anywhere and everywhere, except in the quiet corner out of everyone's way? I overheard them speak. Papa saying that my older brothers were endowed with Allah miles. They take the things naturally, they're lively at work and lively at play. Not so Lemeshke. So, they swallowed their sorrow and tolerated this sixth son of theirs. 1 out of 7, I imagine, is pretty good odds. Mama was the only one who didn't refer to me as Lemeshke. To her, I was mein armer Kind, Nebich, my poor child. My father had one question. Why did God punish us? And Mama piously had her answer. Who can question the ways of the Lord?
And yet, out of that grief and guilt comes the boy whose melodies will follow Jews from Russia to 2nd Avenue to swing and to war.
You see why this isn't just a fun little song story, yes? By the time Mir shows up, there's a lot already living inside it.
In cheder, Sholom absorbed the lyrical music of the prayers, nusach, as if born to sing the ancient melodies. He comes home singing, goes to bed singing, he eats breakfast barely awake, and he's singing again. When Sholom turns 7, the cheder rabbi comes to visit. Your boy has a gift. Show them, Sholomel. Sholom sings a prayer from memory. Applause. And then a couple of tunes from the Yiddish theater in Odessa that his father taught him. More applause. You should take him to Cantor Lev. Shabbos morning, Cantor Lev listens, nods, and sends him to Monsieur Kurich, the choir master at the great synagogue. Kurich offers a spot in the choir. No pay, just a promise. Sholom can attend daily rehearsals after school every day but Saturday. He's 10th alto by fall, soloist before winter. He's so much smaller than the other meshorerim, the singers who harmonize with the cantor, that the balabatim asked the chazan to point out the child who sings but can't be seen.
We Secundas were tall with midas, virtue, but short in stature.
Word travels, but Salo Brun scoops him up 30 rubles a year to sing at Die Chorschule, Nicholayev's largest and wealthiest synagogue. It has a full choir of men and boys. Kurich teaches notes, but I will teach him music, says the choir master. The next year, he offers 60 rubles. His parents stare. That's a month or 2 of a skilled man's wages. In the mills, closer to 4. At 10, Sholom proclaims to his father, I want to be a chazan. You're not even bar mitzvah, Avram replies. No, you are too young.
Again, I say, I want to be a chazan. He could never say no to me. He loved chazanas. He loved that I sang.
Avram approaches the Gabayim, the trustees of the cobbler synagogue, and begs, please let the boy daven from the Amud, just one Shabbos, lead the congregation, not, God forbid, for money. I promise he will not disappoint you. They agree. Friday night, the entire Secunda mishpacha slips into the cobbler's shul, trailed by friends. Sholom, nearly swallowed by a mushroom-shaped yarmulke and talis, takes his place by the eastern wall, opens the siddur, and begins. The room stills, then rises to meet the boy's silver voice. When the service ends, the congregation rushes to congratulate Sholom with handshakes, pats on the back, and pinching his cheeks. What poise! What presence! Shkaya! Your son will be another Rusumni, Russia's greatest chazan. He'll be a famous man someday. The shamus, the warden of the shul, demands an encore from Sholom the next morning. Word travels fast, and in the morning, the tiny shul is packed and overflowing onto the street with worshipers from all the neighborhood shuls, each representing different trades of their congregants. The Schneider, the tailors, the Hittelmacher, the hatters, and the Kirchner, the furriers. Just like that, little Lemeshke has a pulpit and a town that knows his name.
Not bad for a kid who was no good for anything, eh?
Not bad at all. But history isn't done with you yet. 1905. Protests and strikes rattled the Russian Empire. Poisonous rumors spread that the Jews are behind the revolution and betraying true Russians, and nationalist mobs turn on their Jewish neighbors. There is news that the Black Hundreds, Tsarist vigilantes, are approaching Nicholayev. The Secunda's Christian landlord hangs crosses in the windows of their apartment and sends them upstairs to a small hotel on the second floor. Avram hustles his sons and Anna with a new baby girl in her arms up the steps and slams the door, only to realize that Sholom isn't with them. Sholom is standing frozen on the stairs, watching the violence in the courtyard. Men smashing shutters, drunken singing, and prying open the doors below. Avram throws open the door, bounds down, scoops him up, and carries him back inside. He locks the door and, hand shaking, slaps Sholom once, terror turning into warning, while Anna cries silently and kisses his face. They hide for 3 days. A little food reaches them. Worse are the stories. A pregnant woman butchered in the street. Shops stripped clean. The police watching until they don't. On the 4th day, quiet. The crosses spare their apartment, save for broken glass. Life resumes, but not as before.
From that time on, Shabbos felt deeper, music more urgent. And I thought of myself first as a Jew, then everything else. That's what life was like for Jews in Matishka, Russia, Mother Russia.
This is going to echo later in our story. When Bimir Bist Sheyn takes over America's airwaves, remember that it came from a world where being visibly, audibly Jewish could be dangerous.
And later, you'll see what happens when the Nazis hear my little tune and don't like what's hiding inside it.
Yes, that's coming in a future episode. 1906, morning in Yekaterinoslav. An old man pushes a shot glass toward the choir's smallest soloist. L'chaim, Yingele.
I became a drinker at 11.
Since the night of the Black Hundreds, everything shifts. Sholom is a year older now, living away from his parents in the home of Chazan Lachman in a city almost 200 miles from Nicholayev.
It may as well have been another country, a 2-day trip.
He's working as a soloist in Lachman's choir, making 18 rubles a month, nearly a grown man's wage. Mornings can begin with vodka, herring, bread, and a song at a shiva house for mourners. Afternoons mean weddings, evenings, the great synagogue. Choir director Monsieur Shagradsky marvels at how quickly Sholom learns the repertoire. He pats him on the head and smiles. You gobble notes like potatoes. The older boys try to rattle the new kid. When it's time for Sholom's solo, they all sing so quietly that he loses his place. It works once, but Sholom catches on. He misses his parents terribly, but he begins to adapt to his new life. News of the small boy with a big voice attracts capacity crowds at the shul. He writes to his parents every day and sends them his monthly salary and a few extra kopecks. Most of the boys in the synagogue belong to the shul's drama club, where Sholom sings the leading roles, including a production of Goldfaden's Yiddish operetta Shulamis.
Ah, Shulamis. Many years later, I will write my own score for this gem by Avram Goldfaden. Surely you know his song from that famous Yiddish play, Rozinkes mit Mandeln. Oh, come on, you don't know that song? Raisins and almonds?
in dem Beis Hamikdash in a winkel cheder sitzt die Almone Bastia.
Nice, no?
It's gorgeous, Sholom. Sholom grows musically and literally over the winter and spring of 1906. One unseasonably warm afternoon, Sholom and his chevra from the choir are walking back from singing at the funeral of a wealthy congregant. They crowd into a candy store to exchange their fees for chocolate and follow the road back to town along the banks of the Dnieper River. "Let's go for a swim," says one of the boys, his mouth full of candy. They run to the shore, take off their clothes, and swim out a short distance into the murky, frigid water. Oh, too cold. One by one, the shivering boys climb back out of the water. They turn to see Sholom struggling for shore.
My hands refused to move, and I could barely move my legs. I had a terrific pain in my head, and I felt so tired. My mind was racing. All I could think of was Barilla.
He pulls himself onto the bank, trembling. He arrives at the Lachmans, burning with fever. They take him to the hospital, but there are no free beds. As they leave to take him home, he collapses in the corridor. He does not wake up for a week. Typhus. When Sholom regains consciousness, he opens his eyes to bright morning light coming through a large window that looks out to a courtyard. He imagines he sees his mother outside the window standing on a ladder. Mama?
I wasn't dreaming. The nurse told me my mother had been standing on that ladder every day for nearly a week.
It had been a harrowing 6 days for Anna. She received a telegram from Chazan Lachman informing her of Sholom's illness and had taken the first available train from Nicholayev. "I want to see my son," she announced to the doctor. "No one is permitted in his room because of contagion," the doctor replied. "I am not leaving until I see my son," Anna said, setting her jaw. "If you won't let me see him, then I must assume he is dead."
That's my mother, Mama Bear.
Outside, 2 orderlies hold a ladder to allow her to see Sholom for herself. In his sleep, Sholom had inadvertently covered his face with the covers. When she climbs to the top of the ladder, she sees a small mound covered by a sheet and promptly faints, believing that her son has died. A doctor revives her and assures her that Sholom is alive. Finally, she comes back up onto the ladder and a nurse folds back the covers to reveal a semi-conscious Sholom. He remains in the hospital for 3 weeks. The doctors tell Anna she should take her son to Nicholayev, where he can begin what will be a slow recovery. Sholom's career in Yekaterinoslav is over.
You see the pattern? Yes? Me and Rivers, not friends.
Oi, that's dark, Sholom. On the last morning of his stay in the hospital, a nurse walks into his room carrying a little box and hands it to Sholom.
I asked, what's this? And I shook the box. She tells me, open it and see. I lift the cover and I find gelt, many silver coins. While you were sick, the nurse explains, the boys in the choir came to look at you through the window. Every time they came, they brought a few coins.
It is Sholom's share of the funerals and weddings that he missed, and he's deeply touched by the gesture of friendship from the boys who just a few months before tried to elbow him out of the choir. Sholom's recovery is agonizing, particularly for an 11-year-old boy on the brink of puberty. He loses his hair and his voice, as the doctors predicted, but within a few weeks his blonde curls return, and eventually his voice is as strong as ever. In Nicholayev, Sholom returns to a very different family than the one he had left just 12 months ago. He has a new baby sister, Sarachka, and his father has taken 2 older brothers to America. The Segunda's evacuation from the Russian Empire has begun.
Everybody's moving. except the kid who's been paying the rent.
Now the money matters. Anna and her younger boys, Sholom among them, are saving towards tickets. So Sholom pushes harder. At 12, he asked to officiate Shabbosim at the Shols in Nicholayev. The Hittelmacher and Kirchner pass the plate, 25 rubles. Next week, a different Shol. Then Sholom travels to towns within 20 miles. With his father in America, the little singer is becoming the family's paycheck. Between gigs, Sholom sends rhymes set to music home to his mother. His father writes from New York that America is a golden Medina, a golden land with jobs, Yiddish theaters, no czar, and no pogroms. Baruch Hashem. Praise God. In November 1907, a composer in New York, hearing of Sholom's vocal talent, introduces Avram to Mr. Wolf, a producer who will front the money for the rest of the family's tickets to America and recoup his costs from Sholom's future earnings. Their tickets arrive in Nicholayev. They sell everything, like chumetz on Pesach, Passover, to the last crumb, saving only a samovar, a traditional Russian hot water urn for making tea, a silver goblet, and Anna's Techinas Yiddish prayer book. Sholom's farewell Sabbath, his last at the Hittelmacher and Kirchner Shols. The other Shols in Nicholayev arranged to shorten their services so that all the choirs could attend Sholom's last performance. The Gaboyim, the trustees of the Shol, bring 25 rubles for Anna and place a silver watch and chain in the boy's hand, engraved, "We will never forget your sweet singing."
Hardest goodbye I ever sang through.
Tuesday evening, they board the train to Libau, the empire's largest port on the Baltic Sea. At the station, Anna spots an old friend she hasn't seen for 25 years. Droshkis to a tender, smooth water to Liverpool, another 3 days in a holding inn that feels like a prison. Then the liner, Cunard's Carmania, turbines underfoot, winter ahead. Steerage is straw bunks and slop from a kettle. January seas heave, most passengers fold.
I sang Friday night and Motzei Shabbos cantor recitatives to settle stomachs and Yiddish songs when they asked.
For 12 days, the Carmania lurches across the Atlantic like a toy in a bathtub. The adults clutch buckets and railings. The kids run wild. Down in steerage, Sholom has already turned misery into a musical. He's written a Yiddish play called Ungrateful Children and casts every bored kid he can find. For one brief hour, he's turned the lowest deck of a crowded immigrant ship into a kind of balcony. Now the show is over, and outside the world is about to get much bigger. On a gray, snowy morning at the very end of 1907, the Carmania noses its way into New York Harbor. Sholom squeezes between bodies, elbows on the rail. Lady Liberty comes into view.
When we saw the statue, we were so excited.
He doesn't know the words for Hudson River or harbor or liberty. A man next to him takes pity, first in English, then in Yiddish. Verstehst nicht kein English, Jingle? That lady over there, that's the Statue of Liberty, a gift from the French. In her hand, she's holding a torch. It's like she's saying, "Come, even you, little boy. What's your name?"
Sholom, I tell him.
The man tells him about Emma Lazarus, about "You're tired, you're poor," about a poem Sholom can't yet read. Before he can finish, "Solomonchik, come on up! Come down, we're at Ellis Island," calls his brothers. Inside the great hall, it's chaos and benches and bundles and names shouted into a room that smells like wet wool and disinfectant. "Secunda!" They stand. Anna counts heads, gathers their things, and pushes the children forward. In the distance, Sholom spots a familiar shape, a man sitting on the edge of a wooden bench, hat twisting in his hands.
Papa? He looks so different. His beard was gone, and now he had a goatee. He wore a fancy American suit with a vest and a Panama hat, fixed.
Anna takes a step toward her husband. A clerk puts up a hand. Not yet. Immigration inspectors fire questions through an interpreter at Anna. Who are you going to? Who will support you? Will you be a burden? Sholom mostly watches his father.
When they called Sholom Secunda, he flew to the desk like someone had lit a match under his chair.
Then everything tilts again. One of the children, the officials say, has to be examined for suspicion of eye disease. Their coat is marked with chalk. No one is going anywhere. Avram protests in Russian, in Yiddish, whatever scraps of English he thinks might help. Today, hain't, not tomorrow. But in this new country, today is not negotiable. He's ushered out one door. The family is pushed through another. They spend the night in an overheated dormitory on iron cots with thin mattresses. The children drift in and out of sleep. Anna sits upright, crying and rocking, eyes fixed on a bare light bulb swinging from the ceiling.
I dreamt I was back in the hospital in Yekaterinoslav, and Mama was outside the window. Only now, the window was Ellis Island.
In the morning, bad coffee, stale oranges, and stories. A woman next to Anna hasn't seen or heard from her husband in 2 years. Anna listens. She adds her worries to the pile. By midday, a clerk comes looking for them again. Mrs. Secunda, good news. Your boy's eyes are fine. Take your children, bring your things, follow me. They are marched back into the same hall, the same benches, the same shouting of names. This time, when Secunda is called, the pointing finger leads to Avram. He's on his feet before the name is finished.
Here's how I remember it. We ran through the door. My parents clung to each other, kissing and weeping as the snow melted on their faces. My father looked at us and said, "Where's Sholom?" Mama pushed me towards him. "Don't you recognize your own son?" He stared at me for a moment and said, "The last time I saw you, you were a baby."
Avram grins and crushes Sholom in his arms. Then Avram shoulders the bundles. The Secundas walk toward the ferry that will take them, finally, to their new life in New York. New York is cold and muddy and astonishing. The skyline is only a fraction of what it will be, but for a boy who's never seen more than a few stories stacked on top of each other, the buildings near the Battery seem to scrape the clouds. The Singer Building, no relation to the host of this podcast, is the world's tallest building at 47 stories. Avram leads the way like a seasoned tour guide. "This is called an elevated," he explains, "a train that flies through the air." They climb the iron stairs, squeeze into a car that rattles above the street. At each stop, Sholom squints up at the signs.
I knew the Roman letters from the choir music, so I tried to read every station name. That was my first English class.
At 14th Street, they tumble down to street level, then trudge east, past markets and horse carts, past a racket of languages. On East 12th Street, between Avenues B and C, Avram turns into a narrow hallway and starts climbing stairs. 1 flight, 2, 3, kids are racing, mother's panting, 4, 5.
I thought, such a short time in America, and already my father lives on the 5th floor? What a country.
The apartment is not luxurious. 3 small rooms, barely furnished. A little light sneaks in through the courtyard, but Avram is ready with the tour. He shows them the hallway toilet inside the building on their floor outside their apartment. No more freezing outhouses in the yard. Next, he demonstrates the sink. You just turn this little handle, kalt, cold water. The other one, heiss, hot water. No more carrying buckets. The children can't get over it. For an hour, the most exciting attraction in America is indoor plumbing. Then, as dusk falls, it's time for the big finale. Avram points to a box mounted high on the wall, the gas meter. "This is called the kvota meter," he says. "I put in a kvota and watch." He climbs onto a table, twists the gas lamp, strikes a match.
Vayehi or, let there be light.
And there is light.
We formed a circle around my parents and danced like it was Simchas Torah. If this is America, I thought, we're living like Rothschilds.
The next morning, New York life asserts itself. Avram and the older boys have to get back to the metal shop on Christie Street, 11-hour days, $6 a week. But now there are 6 more mouths to feed, and one former child star whose voice is worth testing on the new world. On Shabbos, Avram and his son Velvel, now an Americanized Willie, take Sholom synagogue shopping. 6th Street has 2 shuls sharing a wall like quarreling cousins. They picked the Belchatuver shul, named for the Polish town its congregants once called home. The chazan is midway through the service when Avram corners the shamus. There's some whispering and skeptical looks toward the boy in borrowed talis and yarmulke. Shalom walks to the amud, the cantor's stand, and opens his mouth.
There were maybe 20 people when I started. By Musaf, the place was packed. Word had spread that a young boy was davening next door.
He sings through the end of the service, mixing old melodies from Nicholayev with flourishes he's picked up along the way. The congregants line up after Torah reading to pledge donations. One wealthy cloak manufacturer, Reuben Sadovsky, quietly promises a sum that's more than Avram and his sons earn in a week. By the time Havdalah, the ceremony at the end of Shabbos, is over, Shalom has a side career. The next day, they visit Mr. Wolf, the theatrical manager who helped to secure the steamship tickets. Wolf sizes up this tiny asset in front of him. "He doesn't look 12, he shrugs. "More like 7. All the better. People love a small wonder." Within weeks, advertisements start appearing in the Yiddish press. A solemn photograph of a thin boy in a tallis, holding a prayer book in one hand, a tuning fork in the other. The copy reads like a circus broadside. "Come see a marvel! Once in 1,000 years is such a talent born."
For $25, I sang in Brooklyn one weekend, the Bronx the next. Soon, it was 100 for the big shuls. My brothers quit their jobs to do my promotion. My father stopped working to manage my career. At 13, I was a Reichman, the main breadwinner.
The family upgrades, first to a slightly larger apartment with its own bathroom and, miracle of miracles, a piano on installments. Then to a still better place on Attorney Street with steam heat and electric light. In the tenement gossip chain, this is essentially Park Avenue. But there's a catch. Shalom's voice is a limited time offer. Week by week, the high notes come a little harder. He's still singing, still cashing out after Shabbos. But adulthood is closing in as his voice changes. Then, as in Russia, illness comes calling. Scarlet fever, diphtheria. Quarantine sign nailed to the Secunda's door. Their boarders are sent away. Bookings are canceled. Mr. Wolf is fuming about wasted advertising. The boy wonder is suddenly a silent teenager in a sick room, wondering if there's ever going to be any music left or any career when he emerges.
Oy, such tsuris.
By the time Shalom recovers, the high holidays are looming, and the congregations that welcomed him all year are hesitant. A boy on Shabbos is one thing. A boy as Shliach Tzibur, the messenger for the community, on Yom Kippur, the day of judgment, that feels risky. So Avram and Mr. Wolf come up with a different idea. If the shuls won't let a boy lead the services, what about a theater? On the Bowery, the Talia Theater stands like a cathedral of Yiddish drama. Its star and manager is David Kessler, a famous tenor and onstage volcano with an infamous temper. Sholom has heard about Kessler from his brother's letters back in Nicholayev, the way that other kids talk about baseball heroes. Now he's being marched onto an empty stage of the Thalia to audition for him.
He looked me up and down. This is the cantor? No. Let's hear.
Sholom sings Hineni, Here I Stand Before You, the long, trembling prayer that opens the majestic Yom Kippur Musaf service. Kessler listens from the front row with his arms crossed over his chest. When the last note fades, he bounds up onto the stage. "You have a wonderful voice," he tells the boy, "but that's not enough. The face must also speak. Watch me." He takes the same opening phrase and acts it. Eyes, hands, body, every muscle vibrating with plea and fear and drama. This is prayer as theater. "Now you," says Kessler. Sholom tries again, this time thinking about what his eyebrows are doing. Kessler nods. He's not a Kessler yet, he tells Avram, but he will stand them on their ears. They strike a deal. Posters go up all over the Lower East Side announcing that the world's most famous child cantor will lead the Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur services at the Thalia. Tickets priced like theater tickets, not expensive synagogue dues. There's an uproar in the religious community. A boy who's not even bar mitzvah? In a theater? As a messenger to God? On Yom Kippur? To calm things down, Sholom gets a shotgun bar mitzvah, and they hire a traditional prayer leader who will start the high holiday service. This rabbi will chant the opening passages. After that, the crowd will get what they really came to hear.
So, I didn't earn more than for an ordinary Sabbath, but after that, my name was known, and I had a free ticket to the theater. Every night, I watched Kessler act.
Tenements in New York spinkeln die Wiese. In a Platz für seine Piano bewitste Salonen.
I studied how he used his hands, his eyes, the timing of his voice.
On paper, it's a compromise. Religion rented out by the hour to the theater. But for Sholom, the boy from Nicholayev, who grew up balancing prayers, folk songs, and Yiddish theater, it feels like his worlds are finally touching. He's still the cantor, but he's also unmistakably on stage. While all this is happening, Sholom is doing something quite common and very radical for an immigrant kid. He's racing through school. Public School 22 on Sheriff and Stanton is packed with children whose first language is not English. The Board of Education has created special foreign classes just for them.
I stayed there 4 weeks. Then they moved me to 4th grade. I was older than everyone, but the letters on the page didn't scare me. Music and Russian had already taught me to read left to right.
Every few weeks, his teacher skips him ahead. By the time he finishes elementary school, he's a head shorter and 3 years older than most of his classmates, and he's on the honor roll. He enrolls at DeWitt Clinton High School, then bails after one semester for something even more intense, a cram school on East Broadway called Aaron Prep, which promises to get ambitious immigrants through the Regents exam fast. To pay for it, he takes on piano students, 8 of them, then more, teaching in cramped parlors on the Lower East Side, in Brooklyn, and in Harlem.
I'd do my homework on the elevator between one lesson and the next. I didn't know what it meant to play in the street. Narishkeit. My recreation was practicing.
At home, the piano in the living room finally has an owner who can outplay his first teacher. Sholom studies at the 3rd Street Music School Settlement. Piano, solfege, theory, 25 cents a lesson. Within a few months, the professor says, in effect, "I've taught you everything I know. You need someone better." As Sholom sprints up the ladder of American education by day, at night he's slogging through trills and scales, trying to build a future that doesn't depend on the boy soprano that's already gone. When he's 17, Sholom takes the money he saved from teaching and goes on a pilgrimage. He has one obsession, hearing famous tenor Enrico Caruso sing at the Metropolitan Opera. He walks from the Lower East Side up to 39th Street with $1.50 in his pocket, enough, he hopes, for a cheap ticket. At the box office, the clerk is blunt. Not enough. Sholom walks out heartbroken, but instead of turning south towards home, he wanders into Macy's. On an upper floor, he sees free writing paper and gets an idea. He sits down and writes to the director of the Metropolitan Opera.
I told him I was a poor immigrant boy, that I used to be a singer, that I had never heard an opera. I enclosed all my money and asked if there was any way to see Caruso, even standing.
2 days later, there's a letter in the mail. Come to the Met on the day of the performance, show this letter at the door, and you'll be admitted. On the afternoon of a special performance of Pagliacci, Sholom arrives hours early. The line snakes around the building. When he tries to cut in with his letter, the opera regulars scold him back to the end. Eventually, a uniformed usher takes pity. He disappears with the letter and returns with a man in a top hat who leads Sholom up a red-carpeted stairway, unlocks a door, and sits him alone in a box, one of those private loges that look down on the stage from a curved balcony.
I sat on the edge of the red velvet chair, clutching my cap. The chandelier dimmed, the conductor walked in. People applauded him for just arriving.
The curtain rises. A clown comes out first, a baritone, then another, like a circus. Finally, a wagon rolls on stage, another clown appears, but this time the sound is different.
At first, I didn't know if it was him. I only knew I had a strange feeling. The more he sang, the more I stopped feeling the chair or even my body. I was somewhere else.
A man with a gray beard leans over Sholom and whispers, "This is Caruso." The applause around him is thunder. For Sholom, it lands like silence.
I wanted to cry, but I was ashamed. I mean, how could they shout "Bravo" when I could barely breathe?
When he walks back out into the city that day, something has crystallized. He's seen what a human voice can do with an orchestra and a story. He knows he's not going to be an engineer. He tries Cooper Union anyway. He's good at math, his teachers tell him, but his body keeps drifting back to the Wanamaker's department store where lunchtime organ concerts bleed into piano and violin recitals. Eventually, his chemistry professor calls him in. "Samuel, your work is excellent," he says, "but you've missed too many classes. Where were you?" Sholom tells him the truth. He's been listening to concerts over at the department store. The professor doesn't scold him. He asks a different question. Which would you rather be, an engineer or a musician? The answer is obvious. His professor sends him to Columbia University's music department. Columbia sends him to someone even more central to the American music story, Dr. Frank Damrosch at the Institute of Musical Art, the school that will later become Juilliard.
He questioned me about everything, my studies, my work as a cantor, the choirs, the theory I'd learned. He had me play, sing, and tested me on harmony and solfege.
By the end of the interview, Damrosch is convinced. He tells Sholom to fill out an application. The semester is over, so he'll have to wait until the fall, but he's in. The boy who started his journey as a child cantor in Nicholayev is now standing at the door of a New York conservatory. May 3rd, 1917. Sholom is 23 years old, last day of his postgraduate studies with Damrosch. He heads to Carnegie Hall for a special concert, a premiere of Shlomo, the last piece of Swiss-American composer Ernest Bloch's Jewish cycle. Shlomo, Hebrew for King Solomon, is a rhapsody for cello and orchestra inspired by the book of Ecclesiastes, Kohelet in Hebrew, giving musical voice to Solomon's anguished reflections on life's meaning and emptiness.
His music, it shook me. I was so overwhelmed by his music that I decided right there I had to study with him, especially music for the orchestra.
So he does something very Sholom Secunda. He picks up the phone, calls the famous composer, and asks for an appointment. Bloch lives in a plain walk-up on Lexington Avenue. No marble staircase, no grand lobby, just a bell, a door, and the maestro himself answering it.
Right. He opened the door and said, "Mr. Secunda?" I followed him up 3 flights. He asked about everything. My studies with Damrosh, how I earned a living, what I really wanted.
Sholom tells him the truth. He wants one thing, to learn orchestral writing from the man whose music he just heard blazing through Carnegie Hall. And then Bloch sighs.
He tells me, "Young man, I must charge $20 a lesson. I have little time for students. My symphonies don't bring in enough to support my family. Teaching is my only income."
$20 per lesson? In that world, in that era, it might as well have been $100.
I didn't blame him, but I knew I couldn't pay it. I told him I wasn't privileged to afford such a price.
Sholom gets up to leave, and then another turn. Bloch tells him, "Mr. Secunda, if you like, bring me some of your compositions, the serious ones, the pieces from the Institute. Leave them with me. I'll study them and give you feedback." The next day, Sholom comes back with a stack, a piano sonata, a string quartet, some preludes and fugues. He leaves them on Bloch's desk and goes home to wait. Days crawl. Sholom can't eat. Finally, a letter arrives.
Bloch wrote that he had studied my manuscripts very carefully, and he had decided to give me a scholarship for 1 year.
A year, one-on-one with the composer who just rewired his idea of what Jewish music could be.
That year opened a deep well for me, not only knowledge, but a new palette of Jewish expression. I found in him my musical Mashiach, my Messiah.
In their lessons, something else happens. Bloch starts asking about him, not just the counterpoint and the chord choices, but the sounds of Sholom's childhood, nusach from Nicholayev, Jewish folk songs, the cantorial lines that once lifted Lemeshke out of the corner.
He was born in Switzerland to a rich environment, but one that was spiritually poor. I was surprised. How did it come to him? A person who was raised as an assimilated Jew. How did he have so much Jewish faith, so much Judaism in his soul, such understanding, such insight?
For Sholom, no other Jewish composer before Bloch had ever created such a masterwork of the purest Jewish spirit. During their visits, Bloch would tell Sholom about the time his Zeta, a very pious Jew, once paid a visit to his father's home. Little Ernest saw his grandfather wearing talis and tefillin, standing in a corner swaying and saying his prayers. He had never seen that before, and certainly had never heard it.
Just like my first week in cheder, that melody, that niggun, had been carved into his soul.
When Bloch's musical studies began, his memories of his grandfather's prayers were the true spark of his compositions. Even though he was an assimilated Jew, Bloch would pride himself as a Jewish composer. Bloch's lesson to Sholom is simple and radical.
A Jewish composer should write in the Jewish spirit. He must right as his own heart feels it, just as Italian music sounds Italian, Russian music sounds Russian, a Jew's music must, in time, not only sound Jewish, but be Jewish.
As his life as a composer begins, Sholom sets his sights beyond 2nd Avenue. He will write popular songs, but something new is tugging at his sleeve.
After Bloch, I began writing serious Jewish music. I drank from the deep well of our great Yiddish poets and set their words to melodies rooted in nusach, the way our people pray.
Somewhere in the middle of all this, between Ellis Island and Belchatuver, between Caruso and Damrosh, Sholom's path loops back to the world that first made his heart race, the Yiddish stage. His brother Willie, a budding actor in amateur drama clubs, drags him along to rehearsals. Through those circles, Sholom meets a performer from the Suffolk Street Comedy Theater, the house run by writer-producer-actor Max Gable. Gable is putting on a drama about a Russian revolutionary and needs extras. He'll pay $1 a night. Willie signs up, and so does his short, serious young brother.
The dollar was nice, but more than that, I found myself standing in the wings, listening, watching, timing the laughs, feeling the rhythm of dialogue. It was like being back in steerage, staging my little play, but now with real sets, real lights, an audience that paid to be there.
This is where we'll leave him at the end of episode 1. Not a child cantor anymore, but a young composer in his 20s, pulled in two directions: popular theater on one side and yearning for serious Jewish music on the other.
I knew my days as a cantor were finished, Sheyn, but the music was not finished with me.
Sholom's no longer the Lemeshke from the Shabbos table, and he's not yet the composer of Bist Sheyn, but all the pieces are on the board. Nusach from the cheder, Caruso at the Met, Bloch's Jewish soul in symphonic form, and a front row seat at the Yiddish stage. In our next episode, we'll step fully into that world, into orchestra pits, rehearsal rooms, and a Yiddish theater scene that will eventually give birth to the song at the heart of this season. You've been listening to The Jewish Song Show. This episode was written and produced by Steve Singer. The role of Sholom Secunda was performed by Ed Kelly. Sound design and mixed by Christopher Lang. To learn more, explore sources, and join the conversation, visit jewishsongshow.org. Special thanks to the Secunda family for their generous permission to include excerpt from Sholom Secunda Zichrono Livracha's autobiography and writings. Thanks for listening. See you next time.